Welcome to the show. Here's my dad.
On this episode of the Infant Adoption Guide podcast, we talk with Lindsay and Haley as they share their infant adoption story from the perspective of an adoptive mom and a birth mom. Well, hello and welcome back to the Infant Adoption Guide podcast. My name's Tim Elder, a dad of 3 through infant adoption. This is where we talk all about infant adoption, and you get the inspiration, the stories, the resources, the hope, what you need, the community, the support to start your adventure that you're thinking about 24/7. That's building your family through infant adoption. So thank you for joining me today. Our guests, I should say plural, on the show today is Lindsay, a mom through adoption, and Haley, who's a birth mom, or we sometimes refer to as first mom. They come on the show today to share the story of a pretty recent adoption. Their son's only 6 months old. But a lot had happened leading up to his birth and after his birth. And these two women are just absolutely incredible and inspiring. And you can just feel the love and respect they have for each other as they continue to work on their relationship. And it's just amazing to hear. So if you are new to adoption or you're considering adoption, really pay attention really close to their story and how they talk about each other and how they talk about their son and the emotion you're hearing in their voices, because it's real. This is real life. You'll hear the experiences that they shared, and that's the closest thing you're going to get without experiencing it yourself. So this is why I love sharing these stories on the podcast, because you're going to hear the real life of what happened and what is happening in their experiences, because adoption doesn't stop. That baby's placed in your arms. When that baby is placed with you, adoption is forever. Adoption is for life. And we talk about that in this episode too. So I can't wait to share that with you. And we're going to jump right into the interview right now. All right. Welcome to the show, Lindsay and Haley. How are you all doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us, Tim. We appreciate it.
Yes, so good. Thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. You know, it's nice having more than one person as a guest of the show. It's a little bit tricky to try to get it all rounded up, but I'm glad we did, because it's going to be a great show to have you both on and share your adoption story in a really unique way. We've only done this maybe once or twice before, and I just people love hearing stories. I love hearing stories because it really gives people hope. And it gives people inspiration, especially now, you know, in this weird COVID thing, and we're coming out of it, going back into it. And it gets people, I think people get a little bit discouraged, like, you know, this is not going to happen for us, or what are we going to do? And that's not just on the adoptive parent side, although that's what a large part of our audience is. But, you know, even women that are considering adoption may not know what direction they want to go, or get stuck in whatever crisis they're in. So I really appreciate you two coming on and joining me today. And we're just going to share your story. And I want Lindsay to go ahead and start. If you could just tell us a little bit about your family, like what led you to adoption, and kind of at least a little bit how that happened, what path you chose to match.
Sure. So my husband and I are from Colorado. We after 5 years of being married, we kind of started to build that American dream, as people call it, and, you know, buying our house, and we were established in our careers, and we just came to this, what we felt like was a dead end, because then we faced infertility, and it was very clear for us. My husband got a diagnosis, and it was just a very clear no, which we were very thankful for. We didn't go through this very long, drawn out infertility journey, but it was hard. Obviously, it was devastating. And
Right.
Here we were in this house that we had bought with, you know, a nursery in mind, and this vision of kids running in the backyard, and we weren't going to have that. And so it just kind of made us reevaluate where we were at in life. And we didn't know, you know, I wish I could say that adoption was always something that I wanted to do. I'm always jealous of women who say that. And for me, it started out sort of as plan B. And it's like, I can't even say that without crying now, because we have our boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so never plan B. He is not plan B. But whew, I didn't expect to cry this quick.
It's okay. Definitely know how you feel. Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'll probably cry my whole way through this, but it's still so fresh. He's only 6 months. So Haley will cry with me. I know she will. So anyways, it took us some time. We did some traveling and adventuring, and the thing that helped us was we just kind of considered this a detour. And like I said, it felt like plan B, but we said, this is going to be a detour and it's going to lead to a happy destination. It's, it's going to make sense all day or someday, but, it's just a different path. And so that was sort of our thing. We kept saying, we're just going to follow our detour. And we ended up blogging about that, and I'll go into that later. But our detour led us to adoption. And the more we traveled and adventured, the more we realized the things that we want to pass on to our child, the reasons that we want to be parents, are nothing to do with genetics. So we just felt very led to adoption, and we started the process. We started kind of slow. We were very fearful. It took us a while to get on the same page and to know kind of which path we wanted to take. And we ended up not taking that path at all. Our adoption journey was nothing like what we thought it was going to be. So we actually, Tim, this podcast was sort of one of the first places I started, and just kind of collecting information. And then I heard you had Becca from RG Adoption Consulting on. And so then we went with them and used their consulting services and signed on with 2 agencies. And then we ended up self-matching, and Haley found us on Facebook. I decided to start a Facebook page just sort of as an extension of our profile to show who we are, and kind of it helped me feel like I was being active in our adoption journey, and I wasn't just sitting back and waiting for our agencies to do, all the networking. So something told me to just start a Facebook page and start networking, and it worked. Haley found us, and here we are.
That's really cool that you found each other through Facebook, because I think a lot of people ask that, like, does that really work? Do people actually find each other through Facebook or any social media for that matter? Haley, question for you. Was that the first time you looked at Facebook for somebody, or what made you think to look at Facebook and try to find parents?
Well, kind of the way it started for me was very early on in the pregnancy. I was contemplating adoption. The thought was a thought that was immediately in my mind, but I wasn't 100% certain that it was something I could follow through with. People all the time, and people still say it to me. I just don't think I could ever do that. Well, I didn't think I could either, but I knew it was what was best for my son. So that's the avenue I chose. But in that early initial decision-making process, I was faced with, there was a few different things that held me back, a few different things that, made me think, can I really go through with this? So I decided to look for support groups, and I'm in support groups on Facebook for a few other things. And so I had started looking for support groups for birth mothers, because one of my biggest fears was, number one, wanting an open adoption and then not having it be open. And of course, that is up to the adoptive parents. And then my other concern was the mental health concerns faced later in life due to that separation trauma. Mm-hmm. The biologic trauma that the adopted child faces. I was really worried about that. And I never, ever, ever wanted my child to think that I gave him up or that I didn't want him, because I am a mother to 3 other children who are with me. And so I didn't ever want him to question, why did she want those kids and not me? Mm-hmm. And fortunately, Dan Lindsay and I have a really good relationship. And I think that our son will always know his story, and it will never be, your mom didn't want you. Of course I want him. I would love to have him here with me, but that's selfish. And he would not have lived his best life given the circumstances with me. So, like I said, I was looking for those support groups to see what other birth mothers' experience were. And that's kind of how it started. And through the search for that support group, I found I can't even remember the name of the page at this point, but there was another page that was like for hopeful adoptive parents and potential birth mothers alike. And it was mainly flooded. There was so many more hopeful adoptive families than there were birth mothers. Mm-hmm. But basically, families would share their profiles and a little bit about themselves on that page. So I joined those support groups at the same time. And I spent a lot of time just reading through posts and really pondering the whole experience. And there was one day when I was sitting on my couch on a Saturday last August, and I was looking out the window, and I was in truthfully the worst trenches of my entire life. And I was sitting here, and I knew that I didn't want to reach out to a potential family without having 100% certainty in my heart, because I know that adoptive families, the process is excruciating for them. It can be brutal. You know, they face failed matches and whatnot. And I just couldn't bear the thought of getting the hopes up of a potential adoptive family that's already been through so much and then saying, oh, I can't follow through. So I took the time to myself to make sure I was 100% certain that this was something I could do. And then I really just kind of started sorting through profiles. And I had specific criteria for what my son's adoptive family would look like. I don't need to go into that, but I think every birth mother is entitled to that. You know, we have specific, like I said, criteria. Yeah. And a lot of families were eliminated, or a lot of hopeful adoptive parents were eliminated just because I was very specific on what I wanted for him. And so out of those who met the criteria, there was a couple, but I'm telling you, it's like a God thing, because as soon as I laid eyes on Dan and Lindsay, I fell in love with them. And this is where I get emotional, because I can just talking about it, I remember it so well. Their profile was, it was just it. It was everything I was looking for. And so that's kind of how I found them, and what led me to use the Facebook option, because otherwise I really didn't have any idea who do you call, and social media seems to be the answer for everything anymore. So that's kind of how it happened.
That's awesome. Yeah. Was there anything that stood out? I know you said you saw the profile and you just knew it was them based on what they said. Was there anything like pictures or anything else in their profile that stood out to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First of all, you could tell that they are so madly in love with each other. Love just radiates around Dan and Lindsay and all of their pictures. You can just see it. It's not fake. It's nothing for show. They are so very much in love with each other. And like I said, they exude happiness and love. So that really stood out to me. And the other thing that stood out to me was clearly they love to travel. I love to travel. I live to see the world. And it's very obvious through their profile that they do the same. And then the other thing that really stood out to me was their love of family. I come from a very tight-knit family. When we're all together, there's like around 40 of us. And I always laugh and joke and say we come up with any excuse to be together. Oh, it's Abraham Lincoln's granddaughter's birthday. Let's get together and have dinner. Or it's Cinco de Mayo and none of us are Hispanic, but let's get together and have Taco Tuesday. Any excuse to get together, we are always together. And Dan and Lindsay's profile made it very clear that they were the same way. Family is very important to them, and that's what I wanted for my son. So I just knew when I saw him, I knew in my heart, I knew, and there was never any looking back from that point forward.
Yeah, the pictures, I see their profile, and they have pictures from Costa Rica, from Greece, from I think you're married in Cabo, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm. Costa Rica.
Yeah.
In Cabo? I thought it was Costa Rica.
Cabo. And then we lived in Costa Rica shortly after, but yeah. We
traveled. And then you even have a picture of you sitting on a back of or the top of an RV, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Living the RV life. So certainly travelers. Well,
we were worried. I was like, okay, we need to really put it out there how we don't just like hobby travel. Like, we incorporate our life into travel. And I hope that whatever woman chooses us understands that their child is going to be all over the place. So that was sort of thing we wanted to really make sure we portrayed.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing there. You were a little bit afraid, but you still put it out there. That's the truly you. And that's exactly what actually allowed you to get matched, is being you, your unique self. And that's what Haley wanted. And that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lindsay, how long did you wait before you found out about Haley, or before you chose, she chose you and you guys matched?
So we were home study approved in February. We signed on with our consultant around November, the year before 2019. And then home study approved actually almost to the exact day that then our son was officially ours, the finalization. So it was about 7 months before she had contacted us. And then, like I said, about a year to finalization. So
how did you?
It was the longest year of our lives.
Yeah, I bet. I know that feeling. Yes.
Yeah.
How did you two meet then? Was it just through like a messenger thing through Facebook at first, and then?
This is one of my favorite parts of the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess, Lindsay, I'll start this and then you can kind of add on to it. So as I said, I spent that Saturday pilfering through hundreds of profiles, but once I decided on Dan and Lindsay, I'm like, they're it. I'm just going to stop looking. They're the ones. And I am one of those people where once I set my mind to it, I stick to it. So I really take time to ponder my thoughts because, like I said, once I'm committed, nothing and no one can stop me. So pretty much, I was excited. I wanted to reach out to them right then. And I wanted to make my decision early on because I wanted my son's parents to be a part of as much of the journey as possible. So I wanted to connect with them early so they could be a part of the pregnancy, because that's so much a part of the journey and the child's life. So I knew that I wanted to connect early. So as soon as I made my decision, I was so eager to reach out to them. I think I messaged Lindsay first, or maybe I called. I think I called. The number that was on their profile, they had, a phone number there that you could call. And I wanted to talk to them together. Dan and Lindsay both at the same time. So I didn't have to explain myself twice because there was a lot to my story. And, as a couple that was on that journey together, I wanted them to experience it together. So when I called and I talked to Lindsay, I'm like, I told her a little bit about who I was and asked if Dan was available. And she was like, well, no, but yeah, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I'm like, well, I would really like to speak with you when you're both together. And I would really like to FaceTime because, that's so much more personal. So we were able to arrange that on FaceTime, and their hearts were very guarded at first. And, I'll let Lindsay elaborate on that, but they were very guarded and really didn't open up a whole lot about their plans or whether or not they wanted to pursue something. But I was able to tell them who I am, what I'm about, and my story. And we just kind of let the relationship develop from there. And I'll let Lindsay add on her perspective of that whole situation.
Yeah. So we, putting yourself on Facebook and really putting your adoption journey out there, you get contacted quite a bit. And many of them are scammers, unfortunately. And usually I could tell right away if it was kind of a real situation or not. But we had honestly up until this point that Haley contacted us, we had a lot of ups and downs and a lot of connections that just didn't end up panning out. And we're actually matched with a birth mom for a couple months and had a really close relationship. And she decided to parent. And obviously we, were very supportive of that. And it was just extremely hard. We had 100% gotten our hopes up. We had gone to her 20-week appointment and met her and had a very good relationship. And then just out of the blue, we stopped hearing from her. And it took about a month before we heard from her and heard, that she had a change of heart. And so we were very, very guarded. But there was something very different in the way Haley contacted us that I did get a lot more excited because like she said, she immediately wanted to FaceTime, which was not the norm. It's usually like kind of trying to push to get a little bit more out of some of these other women, that just to see if it's a real thing or not, but not, obviously not push. We never tried to push, but we wanted those things for just that assurance. And she just automatically offered it right off the bat and wanted us both to be there. And so it just felt really good. And it felt like she was very serious, and we could tell her mind was made up. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like we really, we did put a lot of pressure on that first conversation, and we're so nervous. We FaceTimed, and she just immediately spilled like her whole heart and her whole story to us, and was so honest. And we just kept looking at each other like, she is the most courageous woman for, sharing some of these really, really painful parts of her story and what she was going through. And we were just immediately like so in awe of her. And then not only that, like just, she was so compassionate to our story. Like she just said, she knew, that we had been through a lot too. And she never lost sight of that. She just kept saying like, I know you guys have been on a hard journey too. And we're sitting here thinking our journey is nothing compared to what you're going through. And so it was just a really sweet conversation to be thinking of each other's feelings, and we just fell in love with her, but we were so guarded. We just could not get our hopes up at all. And we just kept telling her that. And, she was 5 months out from delivery, and that's, in the adoption world, a really, really long match, and kind of highly discouraged because so much can happen in even just a month, let alone 5. And what I love most about Haley is, like she said, when she gets her mind set on something, she'll go for it. She doesn't change her mind. She's all in. And she pursued us. I mean, she just kept asking if she could send pictures of her belly and send, heart tones. And she was immediately saying, do you want to hear your son's heartbeat? And do you want to see a picture of your son today growing in my belly, and things like that? And she did everything in her power to make the journey easier on us. And I just could talk all day about like how amazing she was and what a dream situation it was for us.
Did you feel like during that 5 months though, that something could happen? Maybe it was too good to be true.
Oh, yeah.
Or,
yeah.
I'm sure you did. That always probably was in the back of your mind, no matter how good it all was going. I'm sure that, and that goes through a lot of people's minds when they're matched and have longer matches like that.
Yeah.
How far?
And I never wanted her to feel she had gone too far. We always told her it doesn't matter up and, like, this is your baby until he's ours. But she's a strong one.
Were you guys far away from each other, like geography wise in the States? Were you hours away from each other, or were you fairly close?
We're actually in neighboring states.
Oh, okay.
So a day's drive. And that was one of the things that kind of factored into my decision as well. I said that after I, decided upon my criteria, a good majority of those profiles were eliminated. But there was one other couple who I would say would have been in the running. And what made me 100% commit to Dan and Lindsay over that couple was on like the Northeast coast. So I wanted him to be far enough away to where, I'm not going to go to Walmart and pass him and see him at ball games and everything else. So I didn't want him like in my town, but I wanted him close enough to where if we were able to pursue the open adoption, it's like a day's drive.
Right.
And so that worked out perfectly. And I didn't want him in the Northeast because that would make travel to see him a lot harder. So now we're about 9 hours apart, and it's far enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good drive, but you can drive it. Oh, makes sense.
And I have.
Yeah.
Well, and we're going to talk about open adoption here in a minute. I first, though, wanted to just think, it's only been 6 months, and what was it like for you two both, and I'll let Lindsay go first, in the hospital? I mean, you were there you got to hold your son for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh my gosh,
you're right there with Haley and probably
Almost.
feeling her.
It was close.
Yeah. Okay. Explain that. Were you right there with Haley then, or where were you when he was born?
So we were there. We stayed in an Airbnb just like 15 minutes from her for an entire month before he was born.
Oh, wow.
We didn't want to miss anything. We got to go to all the weekly appointments leading up to his birth. We wanted just to be able to spend time with Haley and her family. And we didn't want to miss anything. And then sure enough, she calls us around 5 a.m. and says she's headed to the hospital, but she's like, take your time. It's going to take a while for us to get there and get checked in. So then we hop in the car about 6:00 and text her and her mom and say, hey, can we grab Starbucks or breakfast for you guys? And she FaceTimes me and she is on that table and she's like, you need to get here now. So we go from
Starbucks, Lindsay.
Yeah, forget Starbucks. Just kidding.
We don't need breakfast. So we waited an entire month. She was actually supposed to be induced on that following Monday, and it was Saturday. And we had waited and waited and waited. And then sure enough, we are rushing our butts off to the hospital, running in. The nurses are escorting us. And then things slowed down a little bit. So we all had time to breathe.
I was dilated to an 8.5 when we got to the hospital. So yes. I'm like, Lindsay, no. And then she got emotional. She's like, oh my gosh, we've been here for a month. Emotions were high for all of us. So she's like, oh my gosh, we've been here for a month and we're going to miss it. And I'm like, I'm going to try to just lay here. We're okay. But I think it was a huge sigh of relief for all of us when they walked in the door.
But yeah, just so many emotions. I mean, I've never felt so many emotions at once. It's the craziest thing to feel so much joy, but my heart hurt for Haley the whole time. And we had gotten so close that I couldn't help but, want to think of her emotions, and her mom was in the room with us. And so there's no words to even explain how many emotions you have on that day, in that moment. And honestly, it's just complete shock. My husband took this picture of me holding him for the first time doing skin to skin. And you can just see this like daze in my eyes because I'm just in total shock. It didn't feel real. I don't think, especially with the rush to the hospital, it took a long time to even just process what was going on. It was like I was just watching a movie in a way. So I don't think it was really till later that night that he didn't sleep all night, and he was the sweetest, calmest little baby, and just his little eyes just kept staring at me all night. And I didn't sleep a wink. I just stared back at him. And I just remember thinking, I don't know you. I don't know you, and you don't know me. But we're in this together. And the love was just so instant. I can't, Haley, you've got to take over the mess. Tell your side.
I don't really remember the question, but I think it was something along the lines of, were they there? And they were. Like I said, I wanted them included in as much as possible. And I wanted, he is our son. He is my son. He is Dan and Lindsay's son. And that is a dynamic that I think is really difficult for a lot of people to understand. But I think it's difficult to understand because it's not talked about. And I think that's why Lindsay and I are so passionate about sharing our story, because he is our son. And of course, final decision making and whatnot rests with Dan and Lindsay. And I respect that because that was a part of the decision I made. But the love that we share for him is equal. And because they are his parents, I wanted them involved in the decision-making process. So throughout my pregnancy, I did allow them to make decisions. And this is another part where we kind of laugh. I told Lindsay, you call the shots, but an epidural is not negotiable. It was almost not an option, but we did get that good old epidural. But I said everything else was their choice. So I absolutely wanted them included in everything. And so, of course, they were both in the room with me throughout everything because, as his parents, like I said, that's part of the journey. I did not want them to miss a single thing, and they didn't. And I am so thankful for that. So I allowed them to make, decisions about his medical care in the immediate post-delivery time, and they got to make the decision on who got to cut his cord. And yeah, I mean, they were just there for everything, and there's truthfully not a single second, moment, or line item that I would change about the entire experience.
Wow.
Same.
You're just,
Same.
you two are just amazing. I mean,
Thank you.
What a incredible experience. I mean, you could feel the love and picture it in your head just with you all in the room and just pouring your love out for this little boy.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get to continue to do that together for the rest of his life is a powerful message. That is a message that everybody does need to hear. I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you said that because I tell people all the time, adoption does not end when a child's placed with you. It's for life.
No.
And
Absolutely.
So, I can feel that love that you all have for him and feel for each other. And that's pure and genuine and just amazing. And I'm glad you're here to share that. I want to ask you about open adoption. So you mentioned it a little bit already, and open adoption is just, I guess it's a hard concept for some people to wrap their brains around. And it was for my wife and I before we started the adoption process. And I want to talk about it because it is so important. And it does allow for you, for the adoption triad, to love each other and continue on that for all the child's life. So I love the fact that we're talking about it. And I want to know from your guys' perspective, and Lindsay, you can go first, how did you come to an agreement or talk about open adoption and what the contact, how much you're going to stay in touch and how that's going to look? How did that all come about?
Well, honestly, my husband and I had zero exposure to adoption. We were absolutely clueless when we started the process. And so all it really took for us in our early adoption classes that we had to take with our agency for our home study was just hearing the research and how beneficial it is for not only the child, but the birth family, the adoptive family, for everybody. And so we knew that, I guess the hard thing with open adoption is that you don't have any experience. You don't know how your adoption journey is going to pan out. And there's just so many unknowns. So it's really hard to even envision what you want it to look like until you're actually in it. Right. So, I feel like all of our fears just like melted away once we started building the relationship with Haley. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's probably very common because there's so many inaccurate fears that we had, and misconceptions that you believe. And once we actually had a tangible relationship, it was like, okay, this is really not that big of a deal. This is just family. It's just extended family, and it's more people to love on our child. And so it's hard because Haley and us, we never really needed to have those conversations because our relationship just developed. Mm-hmm. and we became friends. And so we knew very early on, she did say she would love to do yearly visits. And so we had some of those kind of initial on that first call. Just sort of to lay that groundwork of like, okay, this is my expectation. These are our expectations. But I think the biggest thing is just having a relationship and kind of taking it as it comes. And, Haley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Well, Haley, how did you come to know? I mean, you said almost at the beginning that you wanted to have some kind of relationship.
100%. There's no way I could have done it without. Mm-hmm. I think the unknown, I don't know there's just no way I could have birthed a child and then spent the rest of my life wondering and not knowing who he is, what he's about, what does he look like, does he have my nose, does he have his mama's hard work and determination. There's just no way I could have navigated my life wondering. So I knew I wanted it to be open. And that is one of the things that held me back, because once the adoption takes place, the openness does lie within the hands of the adoptive parents. So that's why, it was very important to me, that Dan and Lindsay had verbalized that they wanted open adoption as well. But I absolutely did want it to remain open. And, that's one of the things we did discuss. I don't know what open adoption looks like. Like Lindsay said, I didn't want to push them and make them uncomfortable and have it be too much. But yet, one picture a year in the mail wasn't necessarily going to suffice for me either. And kind of like Lindsay said, it's not something we discuss a whole lot. I think we both respect each other's boundaries very well. I am so very thankful for every update I get. I mean, when I get pictures, I tear up and I just stare at him and I love him. It's the weirdest thing for me to describe because I look at him and the love I have for him is so immense. And it's just like that of my other children. But then I don't ever look at him and have regret or wish that I wouldn't have done this because I know wholeheartedly that he is right where he needs to be. He is in the perfect place with the most amazing parents. And I'm just thankful for every little update I get. And, I always get updates when he does something new or when he goes to a well child check. I get to know about all of his adventures. I messaged Lindsay like last week, where's Miles today? She's like, well, here he is. So I don't think either one of us really have issues with boundaries. I think we just on our own try to respect each other's and it just works. And I think that we feel close enough to where if ever I was crossing a line, I think that Dan and Lindsay would tell me. And we've just never really had that issue.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean the first part of open adoption is the word open. I think anybody listening to this who have not adopted yet, which I know there's a lot of you out there, that's the key is and Lindsay already, or both of you already really talked about it, is being open, which means you're open to contact. You're open to developing a relationship. And I know it's not always easy, and there's times when boundaries do have to be talked about and worked on. But you both mentioned it too. It's family, it's relationship, and you said extended family, and I've used that before too. But it's actually closer in my mind than extended family because extended is not. It's too far away. Our kids' birth family is part of our family, and they're close to us, and they should be, and we want them to be, and we invite them to be. And so anybody listening to this, and I think you guys have told the story so beautifully, is that you need that feeling of relationship and growth and work together, communicate, respect each other, which I could totally get that in what you guys have said so far, is the respect is there on both sides. That's huge. So I just want to encourage anybody listening to this that your story is sharing real life of what you go through on both sides of the adoption journey, and it's so important to hear and listen and especially hear a successful story. It's such a success. When I say success, I mean having so much love for each other is, to me, what makes a successful adoption, and then you guys have that hands down.
Well, I think as a parent, you just once your baby is in your arms, as a parent, you just naturally want what's best for them. And knowing that, having this extra love and having this opportunity to have a beautiful relationship with his birth family and be able to offer that to him and to have that just be a part of his life without being a thing, if that makes sense, being a big deal. It's just, this is us. Right. It really, you do whatever it takes because that's what you do as a parent. So it's really no different than every parent, you put in the effort and, it's just like I said, it felt like such a huge thing when we started the adoption process. And now that it's here, it's just us, and it's just our son and our story, and it's life and it's family and love. So, of course there'll be challenges. Of course, like every relationship, there'll be ups and downs, and we'll navigate those, but it's just not a big deal.
Well, you both are willing to work on it. I mean, that's clear. And that's what relationships take.
Yeah.
It's not like it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's sometimes there is work involved. Work meaning just working on communication or working to understand something about the other person. I mean, that's all about relationships. And that's what this truly is. And I feel that already with you guys, just in the few minutes that we've been talking. So,
and I think for Miles, it's really important. So, when he's 15, 16, he's not learning, oh, you're not my biological parents. That's devastating. So if that's what people choose, to each their own, but I don't think that's what Dan and Lindsay or I wanted for our son. So with the way things are now, of course he remembers my voice. We'll do video Snapchats every once in a while. And I don't know if he's smiling at me or at himself when he sees the camera, but we have fun with it. But anyways, it's like Lindsay said, it's just us. It's just our story. So this way he'll never question, well, who was that chick? I'm his first mom, and that will be his normal. So there will never be that big devastating blow that I'm adopted. It's a part of his story, and it's a part of his life. And I think that, Dan, Lindsay, and I have discussed many times that it's very important to us that he does know his story. So I think Lindsay will do an excellent job making sure he knows his story at age appropriate levels, and he'll just always know, and adoption will never be taboo or unknown to him.
Yep.
Wow. Haley, you are so wise. You are just so inspiring. Gosh, just what the love you share and the wisdom you've got is, and
well, thank you.
You are truly courageous, and yeah, you're right. I feel what Lindsay said at the beginning. You could just go on and on and on. I love that you guys are willing to share your story and provide this hope and inspiration for the folks. I'm going to give you one opportunity here to just, if you want to share even just one thing, but what one thing do you want hopeful adoptive parents, that's majority of the people that are listening to this, what do you want them to know about adoption? Lindsay or Haley, you can go first on this one.
Gosh, that's a difficult one for me to answer, mainly because, I'm on the other side of the perspective,
Sure.
But I just want anybody on either side to understand that your story is what you make it. Nobody else writes your story. Societal norms do not write your story. Only those emotionally vested in a child's life can make the decisions on what are best for that child. And the story is exactly what you make it. And as you mentioned earlier, adoption doesn't start when those papers or it doesn't stop, when those papers are signed. It's a lifelong process. And I think a lot of people struggle with it, and they think because in times past, it has been taboo. Families were so set on, no, you keep that child within the family, the grandparents and great grandparents, no, we're going to keep this kid and we'll raise it. And while sure, I know that some on the opposing side of the fence would say adoption is trauma. Well, sure, it is hard, but I know wholeheartedly that our son is living a much better life with two parents in his home than what he would with me. So I want people on both sides of the fence to understand that whatever decision you make is the right one. And the story is truly, like I said, what you make it. And for those hopeful adoptive parents, I would say don't give up. I know that it is an awful journey at times, but I do believe God has his hand in everything. And I truthfully believe he led me to Dan and Lindsay because our story fits together so well. I really kind of feel like Lindsay and I are the same person. Sometimes, we have so many similarities. It's crazy. But while it's a long, painful journey for them, the perfect piece to their puzzle is coming. And while it may not be on their timing, it will be at the most appropriate timing. And I think Lindsay could attest to that, by saying, our son was never plan B. He was the perfect plan from day one. So hang in there, stay positive, because I will say, as an expectant and birth mother, there are some profiles that are negative, and that's very off-putting. So stay optimistic is another big one for me.
Beautifully said. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, mic drop. There's really not much for me to add there.
That is true.
She just perfectly put the bow on the gift and wrapped it up nicely.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, I mean, now being on the other side, it was the hardest journey for us. Adoption was just not, I hated not having the control. I hated the uncertainty, the waiting, the financial part. It is one of the hardest challenges you'll face. But now being on the other side, it is the most worth it. And it's so rewarding. And like Haley said, the pieces just perfectly fit together. And I remember just trying to force and rush and do it all. Every little decision felt like the biggest thing, and it stressed me out. And then here we are on the other side. And I wish I could go back and just tell myself, like, shake myself and be like, just chill out, because it really does fall into place. Yeah. And I know I hated hearing that when I was going through it, because it's just hard to trust, but I have just never been happier in my life. And every single day, like, I don't think I'll ever lose that just immense gratitude for the way things worked out, and looking at this little boy and just knowing how perfect it all came together. So I hope that our story does just give everybody some hope and helps them know that their story's coming too, and their baby's coming. And everyone's different, and our story is going to be totally different from everybody else's, but it'll be perfect for you.
Well said. Yes. And I don't know how you found the time in doing all this, but you actually found the time to write a book. And I want you to talk about that. It's called The Story of You, A Child's First Story of Their Open Adoption. And somehow you found the
this is where I cry.
the way to write this book. And it is totally honoring Haley. And I want you to talk about it, Lindsay. Go ahead.
Yeah, writing a children's book was always a dream of mine. And so obviously just one of the most touching parts of my life, and like the best story of my life, I knew was going to be the day that my son was born. And so I wanted to capture that. And it just kind of all came out of me, because I remember feeling like, what do I even say to Haley? Like, what do I say to the woman who's going to make my biggest dream come true? And I just remember feeling all this pressure. And then I just realized that I just needed to honor her, and I needed Miles to know who she is and the decision she made and the love that she has for him. And so I wanted to be able to offer that the moment he was in my arms. Like, day one, I wanted to be able to share his story with him and who Haley is. And so I wrote it to be able to read to Miles, but I wrote it to more as like a gift for Haley to dedicate to her. And so I knew that it was going to be easy for me to share my perspective with Miles all the time, but I really, more importantly, wanted him to understand what she went through to bring him to us. And so, yeah, the book is just about sort of simultaneously of how I'm wishing for him and how she's, wishing to find us, and how hard of a decision it was for her, but how we came together in love. And it kind of, it's a little piece of the future of how, I will honor her wishes, and she'll always have, he will always have her spirit in him, and how he has two moms. And I just poured my heart into it. And Haley sent me a video after she opened it. I gave it to her as she left the hospital, and she sent me this video of her just sobbing, crying, saying it was the most perfect thing. And that was like everything to me. So I hope that it can be a blessing to other families, and sharing their child's open adoption with them too.
A little bit of excerpt here is, you write, "Mommy loves you. Yes, I do. But did you know she first loved you? You're in my arms now, but always in her heart. With pictures and phone calls, we'll never be apart. Mommy loves you. Yes, I do. Her hopes for you, I will carry through." That is just beautiful.
Oh, goodness. So can I just add on to that really quick?
Yes, please.
A big part of that, I know we haven't talked about it, but I did get to go for my first visit in June to go see him
Mm-hmm.
and took some family with. And something really special that Lindsay and I did is we got matching tattoos. And I heard you mention earlier the adoption triad, and there is actually an adoption symbol, and it's a triangle with a heart intertwined. And of course, that adoption symbol, each leg of the triangle, each side represents the adoption triad, the birth family, the adoptive family, and the child. So Lindsay actually designed our tattoo. And so the bottom piece of the triangle is his name. It says his name. Mm-hmm. And then we both got that tattooed, but I wanted to add something, and I wanted it to relate to the book in some way. Mm. And so I remember how she said, "Your mommy first loved you." So my kind of theme now is "I loved you first." Mm. So beside my adoption symbol, it says "I loved you first," and it's in Lindsay's handwriting. We got them together. And I have also created a birth mother support group on Facebook, and it's called "I Loved You First."
Awesome.
A safe place for birth mothers. So that book has kind of been the spinoff for that as well.
Love it. Love it. We'll share that in the show notes so everybody can find that Facebook group.
Fantastic.
Haley's just been an incredible resource for a lot of women out there already. And her just sharing her perspective and her side of the story has just been so powerful for so many women out there. So I'm so proud of her. So proud of her.
Yes. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words, which is hard for me. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often. But you two are just so amazing and inspiring. And I've done so much, I think, just in sharing your story here, because thousands of people are going to hear this. And not just hopeful adoptive families, but people who have already adopted, expectant women who are thinking about adoption, even adoptees, are going to hear this. And they're going to be inspired by your story. And they're going to be inspired by your book. And they're going to be inspired by your Facebook groups. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. If anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? Lindsay, go ahead.
So the best way to contact me is probably through our blog, followyourdetour.com, or on Instagram, which is at follow_your_detour. And then the book is on Amazon, The Story of You.
Yes. We'll put all those links in the show notes. You can find the book pretty easy and her blog pretty easy. And then Haley will put your Facebook group on the show notes as well. Okay.
Yep. I Loved You First, a safe place for birth mothers.
Awesome. Your son's only 6 months old, but I know you have a lifetime of great relationship and memories to share and love to share, especially with him. So thank you both for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Amazing interview. Oh, wow. Just emotional, inspirational. I can't think of enough adjectives to use here because Lindsay and Haley are just two amazing women that I'm so honored that they came on to share their story, because it's truly incredible and so inspiring, and they had so many good things to say about each other, to say about their son, and to help you on your journey as you're going down the journey to adopt, and to hear their story and to hear their experience is just gold, because that's the next best thing you have to actually experiencing it yourself. So I hope you got a lot out of that interview. I know I did. All the show notes, all the links we talked about are going to be in the show notes at infantadoptionguide.com/94. And I just love that she wrote a book. Goodness, I don't know how she did that in a month amongst all this adoption stuff, but go get her book. It's called The Story of You, a child's first story of their open adoption. And it's on Amazon. but you can get it through paperback or Kindle. And if you are on your journey now and maybe you're considering adoption, maybe you're not sure where to go, maybe you have got a lot of questions. If you're stuck, you don't know where to go, there's a lot of resources on the infiniteadoptionguide.com page. And we have our Facebook group. If you go to the top of the page of infiniteadoptionguide.com, you can find our link to our Facebook group. And I'm the admin there, and I'd love to have you in our group and join the thousands of others that are there. But I'd also like, if you're interested in an agency, and you know lots of people work with an adoption agency to get their adoption journey going and started, and I invite you, if you're looking for one, if you don't know that you're looking for one, check out findmyadoptionagency.com. We got an online course all about how to find the right adoption agency for you. Not just find it, but choose it, and why you want to choose the right adoption, how to choose the right adoption, where to choose the right adoption agency. All that is in this course. Put a lot into it, and throughout our 3 adoptions, throughout all the experience of the last 10 plus years that we've been working with people into this course. And we've got many agencies already listed in the course. We've got awesome resources for you in the course. Go check it out, findmyadoptionagency.com. All right, until next time, you are in my prayers as you go on the journey to adopt. God bless. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to my dad.